The following interview is being conducted as part of the Price of Freedom Oral History Series, sponsored by the Madison County Military Heritage Commission, to inform the public of the sacrifices made by veterans in our community on battlefields around the world. Each veteran interviewed received a Valor Award for their heroism during combat. We wish to thank the Huntsville School System and the ETV Broadcast Center for their help in presenting this Military Heritage Program. Hello, I'm Tom Kennemer. Welcome to our program. Today we'll be talking with U.S. Marine Corps veteran James Andrews. Corporal Andrews received the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal with Combat V for his heroic action while serving in Afghanistan during Operation Enduring Freedom. He was inducted into the Madison County Military Heritage Hall of Heroes in 2023. James, welcome to our program. Thank you, sir, for being with us.
I appreciate it
very much. I want you to tell us a little about yourself. Are you originally from Madison County, this area?
My parents are from here, pretty much born and raised around here, Madison and Harvest area. And my dad was in college when I was born, and he went to college up north, so I was actually born in Indiana. But
I see. Yeah.
we moved down here when he got done with college. We moved back down this way.
When did you start thinking about maybe joining the military? Was that like in grade school or early age?
I don't really remember thinking about joining the military when I was a kid. I remember, my dad had a lot of military stuff. He wasn't prior military, but he had a lot of, stuff that he would get from like Army surplus. And I remember him having a sea bag full of, old military, belts and canteens and stuff like that we would play with when I was a kid. Yeah. When I was a kid, I always wanted to be a cop. I always thought that I would be a police officer. And so I remember watching, he was really big into military history and World War II and Vietnam and stuff. And, I remember being surrounded by that, information as a kid, but I don't really remember, thinking that I would, when I was a kid, I don't remember thinking that I wanted to grow up to be military.
Was he in the Marine Corps, your dad?
No, he wasn't. He wasn't in service. He decided he was a preacher, and he had surrendered to preach. I think at a pretty young age, 18 or 19, and went off to college and to study to be a pastor and stuff. And then so he did that, but I don't know where his love of the military, history and stuff came from, but that's kind of where I got it from.
We've talked before, and you've mentioned there was something that prompted you to go in the military and in the Marines. Talk about that.
Well, when I was a senior in high school, which this would have been, 95, a couple of my buddies, they had talked about joining, and so we all went down, and we were going to go in on the buddy program, and we all three signed up on the DEP program and as seniors in high school, and they made all these promises, that we'd be able to go together and go. And I ended up, a lot of things happened, and I ended up not going. And one of my other buddies, he ended up not going. So the third one, he was stuck going by himself. But so get to going along and ended up staying around here in Madison County and met a woman and got married and, started doing that whole thing. And our second wedding anniversary was September 11th. We got married September 11th of 99. And so for our second anniversary, we had gone to New York City the weekend before.
Wow.
September 11th. And went up there for a concert. And, went around, did all the touristy stuff, and I think it's called the Top of the Bus Tour, the double-decker bus that you can ride on top. And it lets you off at all the different historic and tourist sites, and stuff like that. And
things you'd like to see. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so we did that one day, that weekend before. And so we went to the trade centers and went to the Statue of Liberty in Chinatown and the Empire State Building and all that stuff. Took a lot of pictures, of the Trade Center and, how tall they were, from standing underneath them, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And the only thing I really knew about the Trade Center at that time, that they were, tall buildings, and
Right.
that they had been bombed, in the earlier in the 90s. That I knew that there had been a truck bomb in the basement, and I remember I took a picture of that, the garage door that goes down toward that basement where the bombing was, because that's really all I knew about the Trade Center. And then, so we were supposed to fly back. We were supposed to fly back home. We had a late flight on the September 10th, and our flight ended up getting delayed, and got delayed coming out of New York, and then got delayed again. We had a layover in Memphis. We got delayed again. We ended up not getting back till early in the morning on September 11th, and we both had to be back to work. And so we got to work, and a couple hours later, I'm listening to the radio, and at first I just heard that the Trade Center was on fire, and I was like, well, turn that up, because I was just there, and then the reports I was hearing, on the station I was listening to, they were talking about, it sounded like it might have been a small plane that hit one of the buildings. Right. And which I think a lot of people thought that in the beginning, and then when they talked about the second plane hitting, I immediately, I couldn't wait to get off of work, because for one, to watch the news, but I wanted to go get that film developed. It was back before digital everything, and so I had to take the film to CVS or wherever it was, and paid for Rush, to get them to develop that film, just to get those pictures of the Trade Center and stuff. But I had wanted to go into Marines, since 95, 96, being a senior in high school, and then not being able to, and I just thought it wasn't ever going to be an option. There was a lot of stuff that went on my senior year, that I got in a lot of trouble, got kicked out of school, didn't graduate high school, and had to get a GED. And back then, there wasn't a war going on. So back then, if you had a GED, you had to have 2 years of college. Right. And, going to college at the time was not going to be an option for me. So I didn't think it would ever be an option for me to go into the military. But especially after September 11th, I really wanted to go. Yeah.
Really made an impact on you, didn't it?
Yeah.
All right, so you joined the Marines, and you got to Parris Island. What was your first thoughts about that?
So I was older, by that point, because I was a senior in high school. I would have graduated, I was a class of 96. So, September 11th, 2001 happens. And then, I was still married at the time, and we ended up divorcing a few years later. And after we divorced in 2005, I started looking into, and in the 06, I guess early 06, started looking into, actually I stuck my head in the Marine Corps office and was like, hey, how old do you have to be? Is there an age cutoff? Because I was 28 at that time. I said, is there an age cutoff for going into the Marines? And he said, well, how old are you? I said, 28. And he said, well, it's 29. You better get in here. And so I went in and, went through that whole process, and just with my past, and, I'm sure every branch is this way, but, they have all these rules about, who can and can't get in. And there are certain things that you can get waivers for. So, they want you to have a high school diploma, but you can get a waiver. Right. Or they want you to, not have certain tattoos, but you can get a waiver. Smoking marijuana in the past, but you can get a waiver. And criminal history, if you've ever been arrested, but you can get a waiver. And so there was all this stuff that I had gotten in trouble for when I was a teenager, and stuff that was coming back to affect me getting in the Marine Corps. Right. Yeah. And so I was having to get a waiver, and they'd say, okay, we got you now. You'll be able to get in. You'll be able to go now. And they, called me a couple weeks later, and they said, well, they're not going to take you. They're not going to let you go. And so I, have to get another waiver for something else, and they say, okay, well, you should be good now. And I'd get a call a couple weeks later, well, they're not going to take you. They're not going to let you. And this went on, for several months. And so I'd actually gone over and talked to the Army, and the Army was offering a sign-on bonus, and they were like, oh yeah, you can come in for sure, come on in. And so I had planned on, I was just going to do that. And I was on my way into the office to sign the papers with the Army, And I stuck my head in the Marine Corps office because I really liked my recruiter that I had for the Marines. And I stuck my head in the door just to say hey to him on my way next door to sign up. And he was on the phone, and he said, hang on, I got one that just walked in. We should be good now, you know. And he gets off the phone. He said, hey, what are you doing right now? I said, well, I'm headed next door to sign with the Army. And he said, no, get in here. I can get you in now. And I was like, well, y'all been saying that for months. Like, he said, no, for real, I can do it now. And I said, well, the Army's offering
Such and
like
such,
a $60-something thousand sign-on bonus. What's the Marines offering? And he was like, you'll be a Marine. And I was like, that's and he used a little more colorful language than that. But he said, you'll be a Marine. And I was like, okay, that's. And so he went over and got my file, you know, from the Army, and he said, you know, good news and bad news. I can get you in, but you got to leave next week. And so at the time I was working for myself doing remodeling and construction stuff. And so I had a business to run. I had, you know, apartment I had to get rid of and store, you know, furniture and everything. And I said, I can't, like, I got to have more. And it wasn't even a full week. It was going to be like, you know, 5 or 6 days that they were going to give me. And he ended up getting it pushed back 2 more weeks. But I'm laying there in the rack that first night at Paris Island. And I'm thinking, what in the heck did I do? Like, what am I doing here? I'm 28 years old, and I've just arrived on Paris Island, and I had not seen like Full Metal Jacket. I didn't know a lot about Marine Corps boot camp. I just, you know, had always heard that they were the toughest and the hardest and all that. So it was a shock to the system. And I was 28.
A lot of recruits that thought the same thing that you did.
And I had not done any, like, I didn't go to the gym. I didn't run. I was a smoker back then. You know, so I had not done anything since high school as far as like working out or. So I had a lot of work I had to do when I got there.
What was the hardest part of the training at Paris Island?
For me, it was the running. I've never been
getting in shape.
I've never been a runner, and even during my whole Marine Corps career, I never got very good at running. And so for me, it was the running. And then I'm not a morning person. I don't like getting up early. They love getting up early.
That changed. That changed
at Paris Island. So, you know, that first week of Marine Corps boot camp, you do an initial strength test, and it's running 1.5 miles and doing some push-ups and sit-ups or pull-ups and sit-ups and stuff. And you run 1.5 miles, and I forget what the time is, 15 minutes and something that you have to finish that. And you know, I made it through that, but then, you know, after one of the drill instructors said, how many of y'all that hurt? Like, how you struggled with that? And several of us raised our hand. He said, well, congratulations, because that's the shortest distance you'll ever run in the Marine Corps. And I was like, oh God, I may die. Like, I may, but it was, you know, just, I didn't have a hard time, you know, growing up a preacher's kid. I didn't struggle with the discipline or the, you know, respect, you know, showing respect. And I was 28. I mean, you are who you are by that point. You know, you're an adult. And some of those guys that come in at 17 and 18, I'm sure.
They kind of look up to you because of your.
They did, and a lot of them called me Pappy. That was my nickname.
Grandpa, whatever.
I was the old man, the grand old man of the Marine Corps, that sort of thing. But it was fun, and I, you know, I was mature enough, you know, that, you know, I think I was able to help some of the guys get through just by keeping things light and, you know, cracking jokes, and because I mean it is serious, you know, Marine Corps boot camp, but you know, when you can crack a joke under your breath and, you know, behind the drill instructor's back and just kind of ease some of the tension that.
A lot of them probably looked up to you. James, because if he can do it, I know I can do it.
Yeah.
When they're 17 or
Right.
18 years old.
Yeah.
How was it determined what you would do in the Marine Corps? I mean, did you get to did you get to make a choice for yourself?
So yes and no. So the way, and I don't know about the other branches, and I'm not sure about. I'm guessing the Marine Corps still does it the same way. You have several different job fields. That's kind of an umbrella, and then under that job field, it'll branch out to several different specific jobs. And I wanted to be in combat. I wanted to go fight, and that was the only thing I wanted to do. And I had scored pretty high on my ASVAB, and so my recruiter kept trying to push me into other fields that required a higher ASVAB score than infantry. But I wanted to go into infantry, and I didn't understand how the infantry worked as far as there being different jobs in the infantry and stuff like that. So when you first originally go in, the job code or the MOS code is 03. And so you just go in as a basic 03 Marine trainee. And once you get to SOI, you graduate boot camp, you get like 10 days off, 10 days back home, and then you go to SOI in the School of Infantry. And every infantry Marine trains the same. It's all the same training for the first several weeks. And then once you go for a few weeks, they start testing you out for what specific job you're going to do. So you can be your basic infantry Marine, which is an 0311, and they have machine gunners and mortarmen. And one of the instructors had talked to me about being it was called anti-tank assaultman at the time, 0351, and they've done away with that MOS now, from what I understand. But they, you have to be good at math, and that's why they had talked to me about that. And you have to take a math test, an extra math test.
Make sure you qualify.
And see how you do, because you got to be able to calculate, det cord and explosive charges and stuff like that, because you're going to be carrying explosives and dealing with, C4 and rockets and, things like that. So I tested out for that. And so then about halfway through SOI is when you branch off and you start, focusing on, your training focuses on that, whatever specialty you're going to do. And so that's how I ended up being a 0351. And we still didn't, we learned a lot of breaching and stuff like that, and, blowing indoors and dealing with C4 and different explosives and stuff like that. But ended up not really using a whole lot of it. We used it, just the knowledge that I had gained from that with dealing with IEDs when we were overseas and stuff. But
where was your first duty station?
Camp Lejeune, North Carolina.
Yeah. And tell us a little about. Well, that was right after the train had to be up in that area.
Yeah, Camp Geiger's just right down the road from Camp Lejeune. So I think we got another. No, actually, I don't even think we did get a break between. You get picked up at SOI, the School of Infantry, and get taken over, get bussed right over, and get introduced to your unit. And I got assigned to 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines, and they had just come back from deployment to Iraq, and so several of the guys, was on leave and then coming back off of leave from being on that deployment. And so they were just kind of getting started on getting trained back up for the next deployment. So I got assigned to 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines, Echo Company. And
how long were you there at June for your training?
That initial training, so I joined in November of 2006 is when I left for boot camp, and got out of, I guess boot camp would have been through February the 13th of 07, and then SOI, I think it's another 8 or 9 weeks. So we got there in maybe May, we got assigned to the unit, and then we deployed to Ramadi, Iraq in October. So toward the end of October.
Yeah.
So I spent my 1-year anniversary in the Marines was in Iraq.
So what did your unit, what all did you do in Iraq when you first got there? What was your job?
So we were excited to go to Ramadi, especially when we found out that we were going to Ramadi, because at the time we were hearing all the, there was a big battle that was going on in Ramadi in 05 and 06. By the time we got there in 07, it had, they had done their job, and everything had calmed down by the time we got there. We got there, we went to Kuwait, stayed for a couple days, and then went up to Camp Ramadi there in Ramadi, and stayed there for I think a week or so, and then we started replacing the other Marines that were out in town. And they had taken over houses in different parts of the town and built compounds around and HESCO barriers and walls and stuff. And so we moved out into town, and it was just a lot of daily patrols, a lot of foot patrols, a lot of just trying to interact with the locals and trying to. I remember going and holding security on a lot of meetings where some of the military higher-ups would be having meetings with the important folks in Ramadi and stuff like that. So it was a lot. It was pretty quiet. Not a lot of engagements and stuff like that. With
how did the normal Iraqi people, not the enemy, but how did normal Iraqi people react to you? I mean, seeing Americans, patrolling their part of the country and so forth.
They were all. Most of the time everybody was really nice. Of course, the women don't really acknowledge you at all. But the men, a lot of times, they'll acknowledge you. But you just always get, and I'm sure it's just a paranoia of, it just always, it seemed like you got some, they would glare at you, or things like that, even though they might, nod their head or say hello or, things like that. But, it's just, you're on such a heightened sense of awareness that you're paranoid of everybody.
Yeah, who can you trust? You don't know who you can trust.
And the compound that we were living in, the house that we were living in, that had a smaller house attached to it by this little breezeway, and so we had a bunch of Iraqi police that stayed there, and then some Iraqi army guys that would stay there, and even those guys, you're paranoid, and you don't know, because you hear stories, of people that are, and then they had a gun room with I don't remember the number, 80 something AK-47s, and we went down there one day, and like 40 of them were missing, 40 of the AKs were missing, and things like that, and so. It's
makes you wonder.
It's constantly being paranoid and constantly, but like we had a kid that it was our little Iraqi kid, and he had scars real bad on his face. He had been burned, and both of his parents had been killed previous. And he would come around, and we'd give him money, and he would go to the market, and he'd buy us a goat or a chicken, and or things like that, and then we'd give him some extra money, and he'd go buy himself a pair of shoes, or something. And but even him, we had to be careful about letting him come through the gate, because you
did he have
never know
explosives?
You just never know.
Now, how long you served? A tour was what, 12 months in Iraq there? Or?
7 months.
7 months.
Did 7 months.
Now you came straight back to States. You went back to Lejeune. Is that where you went?
Yeah. We came home and came back to Lejeune, and then you get 20 or 30 days off that you can come home and come back to Alabama and relax, and then
see the folks.
Slowly start. Working, doing another workup for another deployment.
So how long was it after you you had 30 days leave, and you go back and train a little more, and you went to Afghanistan, right? Yeah.
So we left for Afghanistan. I think it was middle or late May of 2009, and I think there was some back and forth. We had heard different things. I think we were slated actually to go back to Iraq originally, and then they talked about sending us on a MEU. And then it got changed to that we were going to Afghanistan. And Obama had been elected, and so he was, they were going to work on this push into kind of, I don't know if it's necessarily, I don't know if they were looking at it the same as like George Bush's troop surge in Iraq, but he was doing kind of a troop surge type thing into southern Afghanistan and going to do an operation down there. So we got slated to go down there. So we went to Afghanistan, to Camp Leatherneck, and we stayed there. We stayed there for probably 5 or 6 weeks, just getting trained up and then, I guess, finalizing the logistics and stuff like that. It was going to be the largest helicopter-borne operation since Vietnam, so there was a lot of moving parts and a lot of logistics and training that had to go on. Get ready.
Now, you served in Iraq and Afghanistan. How would you describe the difference between the two countries?
As far as the people, I didn't really notice that much of a difference. The landscape, and I guess just where we were, I don't have, my only experience in Iraq really was in the city, in Ramadi, and so it's obviously it looks a lot different than cities that we're used to, but the clay tan colored buildings with walled, brick, dirt, compound walls, and stuff like that. Yeah. But it was an actual city, and then we went out into the desert a few times, and it's wide open, nothing but desert and sand. But in Afghanistan, I never saw a city, in Afghanistan. It was always just wide open country and desert, sand, and where we were, Camp Leatherneck is just surrounded by, as far as I ever saw, was just surrounded by nothing but desert, nothing green, just sand everywhere. And when we got flown into southern Afghanistan, we were in the Helmand Valley, and so there's a little bit more green in the valley because you got the Helmand River that runs through there, and then there's a lot of canals that run off of the Helmand River that they use to irrigate their fields and stuff like that. So it was green in the valley, but then wide open sand, all for as far as you can see on both sides of the valley. So,
how about the living conditions?
Definitely had a lot better living conditions in Iraq because we had taken over. We were living in a house basically, and you've got, I don't remember how many Marines we had there, 40-something, 50-something Marines at least, that living in there. And, we had a room where before we got there, they had built basically bunk beds. And so we had 3 Marines sleeping on top of each other. Yeah. But at least, we had a foam mattress on each one of the beds, and you sleep under your poncho liner and you're sleeping indoors. And so it was, yeah.
Not home conditions.
Right.
Yeah.
Nothing compared to home, but we didn't know how good we had it, too, that being able to send Muhammad to the market to get us a goat, that we can cook, that we can kill and cook, and get us chickens, and having access to their bread was amazing. Sending him to the market to pick us up bags of that bread that they make, stuff like that. So we were eating good, and I tried goat brain for the first time,
really?
Stuff like that. Yeah, so eating the falafel,
expanding your taste.
Yeah,
right?
it was a one and only time. But we get to Afghanistan, and being on the base at Camp Leatherneck. Camp Leatherneck was not nice at all. I mean, it was just a bunch of large tents with 60 or 100 Marines sleeping in each tent. But whenever we had enough time, we could walk over to the British side of the base. I forget what it was called, something else. But the Brits had it nice, and they had a coffee shop and a TV lounge and all this stuff. So anytime we could, we would slip over there and
spend a little time there.
go be able to sit in air conditioning and stuff like that. But once we got flown out, once we left Leatherneck and got sent down to southern Afghanistan, it was sleeping in the dirt for the next 5.5 months. No showers, no baths. We we were staying in a school right after we got down there. There was an abandoned school, so we were sleeping in there, but it was so hot that you couldn't hardly sleep. And so most of the Marines moved outside. And one of my buddies, I talked him into, he was digging a hole to sleep in, and I talked him into making it a double so that I could move in with him. And he dug a hole, and they had given us, we took down with us these little one-man, basically mosquito net tents, little pop-up tent, little one-man tents, and so we would sleep in those outside in your hole, your little foxhole, I guess. And it was just being dirty, just to have to get used to being dirty and nasty, and your
Glad to
socks.
get out of there
When you go to put your socks back on the next morning, they're
stiff,
crunchy, and because and bathing in the canal, trying to clean off in the canal and stuff like that. And somebody did send us some solar showers, it's a black rubbery plastic bag that you fill it with water and you set it in the sun, and it'll absorb the heat from the sun, and it's got a hose that comes out of it, and you can hang it up on a tree.
Modern conveniences.
And it take a little bit of a shower that way, but that was about it.
James, while in the combat zone, war zone, were you able to stay in touch with your family or friends?
So on the base you could. They had a building that had several phones in it that you would be able to make calls home and stuff. Once we got down to southern Afghanistan, we had one satellite phone. There was about 220 of us Marines down there, and we had one satellite phone. And so they kind of put it on a rotation to where, and the battery didn't last that long on the phone. So you'd get a 5 or 10 minute phone call, maybe by the time it got around to you, maybe every couple of weeks. So you had to be, and then, it might be having to have somebody wake you up in the middle of the night over there so that you can make a phone call to the folks back home, to especially, if you got kids or, people in school, you're trying to work around, trying to do the time on somebody's work schedule or school schedule. And it was difficult. Toward the end, they ended up sending us some kind of satellite system that was with some computers that allowed us to be able to log in to send emails and stuff. But that was just the last couple of weeks we were there. So before that, it was mostly satellite phone and hoping that you'd get a signal.
Yeah. Now, did you have to learn the language, or at least pick up enough that you were able to communicate with the Afghans, or when you're in Iraq, to be able to communicate with those people?
They sent us through some training, kind of a cultural awareness, I guess, kind of type training. Mm-hmm. I remember going through, and I remember the lady, telling us about because it's a completely different culture. They have completely different expectations, of what's polite and what's not. And I remember little things like them telling us don't cross our legs, because it's disrespectful to show them the bottom of your shoe. That if they offer you, they drink chai, that tea that they drink over there, and so. If they offer you chai, you have to take it and you have to drink it because it's rude. It's very disrespectful for you to turn that down. So I remember, them, and then I remember them trying to teach us a lot of, the language and stuff and Pashto, and I remember learning some. My main ones that I would try to, and I don't even know if I remember any of them now, but I would try to, be able to say hello and thank you, and maybe how are you doing, or something like that. But
basic communication.
Yeah, just very basic, and then some commands for don't move and let me see your hands, or stuff like that. but we were pretty lucky as far we had interpreters with us. I think all the time. It seems like we had interpreters with us the entire time. So
that was helpful.
in Iraq, I got really close with the interpreters that we had. They were the two guys. They were from Jordan, and they were attached to us, and they really helped a lot. And then in Afghanistan, we had several that were with us, and so that came in handy a lot. So I didn't have to do a lot of trying to communicate with other than hello and
let the sergeant or the lieutenant take care of that.
Yeah, let somebody else do all the.
James, tell us about the action for which you would receive the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal with Combat V. Describe what happened.
So I got written up for that for a couple of different incidents, but one of them, I guess one of the main ones, was September 11th of 2009. I was in Afghanistan, and since I did have that training with explosives and stuff like that, I got assigned to, and I was also, before I went to Iraq, I had gotten licensed to drive all the vehicles that we had access to. So I was one of the few in our unit that had the certifications to be able to drive all those vehicles. I had really bad feet and stuff, so I was able to drive those vehicles. And EOD, the explosive guys that were attached to us, they had their own MRAP vehicle that they had all their equipment in. So with my explosive training and stuff, and then being licensed and having bad feet, so them trying to help me out, I got assigned as security for EOD. And so I'd go on foot patrols with them, go and then drive them out, if we had stuff to do. But we were out on patrol that day and came under fire. We would get attacked a lot. There were weeks and weeks that we would fighting every day. We'd get attacked or start getting ambushed or something like that. And we got in a firefight that day, and we were kind of pinned down at the edge of this field. There's the fields are plowed basically with livestock pulling a plow, but at the edge of the fields they would have kind of a raised berm, just a small berm. So we were kind of pinned down behind that berm, and we would walk on those berms because we didn't want to walk in their fields. Right. And so the enemy, obviously they knew that, they know that that's where we're going to walk. So that's where they would plant their IEDs, their improvised explosive devices. And sometimes they would plant just one device. Sometimes it would be what we call daisy chained together. So they may have 6 or 8 devices that are spread out over 20 feet apart, and they're wired all together. So if one of them goes off, they all go off.
Kill more people that way.
Yeah, because they know that that's how we patrol too.
Right.
Marines we don't walk side by side, and we're gonna be spread out, 20 or 30 feet between each Marine. So they would have them set up that way, but we were pinned down, and basically there was kind of one low spot where it was a safe or a good enough spot to return fire, because the way the enemy was, there would be a lot of firefights where you might not ever even see who's shooting at you,
right? Just
depending on where they're at and the layout of the land and stuff like that. And so the one spot clear for me to be able to clearly return fire just happened to be where the IED was, and so I had to lay on that, and just be able to relieve some of the pressure from our unit to get the guys to be able to move around, to flank around, to relieve the pressure on that, and allow EOD to slide over there and dismantle it. So that was included in my write-up for that award, and then we had a system where we were able to. I don't know how much detail I can give about it. I don't know how secret. I don't think it's a secret, but a system that enabled us to see very long distance, and if we saw something going on, we could use a laser to pinpoint exactly the coordinates of wherever that person is. Right. And so was able to use that successfully a lot to get the exact location of different enemy combatants, and we would either call in mortars or artillery or drop a bomb on them and things like that. So.
I'm sure a lot of things are going through your mind at a time like this, especially trying to dismantle it. Your own survival, the survival of others. How does fear and courage play into all of this, James?
I think, fear and that adrenaline that you're feeling, I think it heightens your, senses and things. You get that auditory exclusion where, it kind of blocking out the rest of the world and that sort of thing. I don't think about the courage side of it, because when you're about to deploy and you're going to deploy to a combat zone especially, you pretty much make peace with.
Yeah, you have to take it in consideration.
That this may not be it.
Yeah.
And, I sat down in a notebook and wrote letters to, everybody, just because that may be it. And for a lot of guys it is. And that.
At a time like this, training kicks in as well, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I do, I've laughed about it since then, that I remember, seeing Army and Marine movies, in the past, when I was a kid or when I was a teenager and stuff, and then even a younger adult, and you see guys running toward the gunfire and stuff, and I always thought, man, that's stupid. That's like, it seems like it'd be better to lay down or hide behind something. Why are you moving toward that?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But then you go through all that training and that muscle memory and, and things. And so I remember specifically the time that the first time I got shot at and where we made movement toward contact, and without thinking that, you're getting shot from the right and we start immediately, we're moving to the right toward contact.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, wow, I've come a long way. Now I get why we do that. And why I thought they were so stupid for doing that in the movies. But a lot of it's just the training. You don't want to let your guys down.
Right.
You don't want to let the guys down around you.
You want to be able to do your job. Yeah.
Right, because it's unfortunately, a lot of times if somebody does something stupid, you're putting yourself in danger. But more times than not, it's the people around you are getting hurt because of something stupid you did. So you don't want that, that responsibility. Yeah. But if you're, dismantling an explosive or, laying on an explosive or something like that, I don't think there's a lot of, I don't remember there being a lot of conscious thought about it. Because if it goes off, you're never going to know it. You're done. It's not like it's going to hurt. You're just not going to know it because you're not going to be there. No.
How do you feel when people call you a hero, when they read about or hear about what you did in combat? How does that make you feel?
Far from a hero. I've read and watched so many, stories about these guys in World War II and Vietnam and stuff, and those, they don't make men like that anymore, and I'm nowhere near anything that those guys did.
Well, you're right up there.
I just don't see it. It's cool for my kids. That's the way I look at it, that, having my name on the wall down at the courthouse, that'll be cool for my kids, and then hopefully they'll take their kids to, down there, stuff like that, and telling the stories and the friends that we make and stuff like that. But definitely not a hero. I definitely don't look at it that way. The guys that did not come home, I forget what the quote is, was it Dick Winters that, talked about his grandkid, asked him, if he was a hero, and he said he wasn't a hero, but he served in a company of heroes,
Yeah.
And I definitely can relate. That's those guys that we left that didn't make it back.
You lost some guys on that tour, didn't you?
Yeah, I think 14 guys got killed, and several more injured. we flew down to southern Afghanistan July the 2nd when our unit Echo Company landed in southern Afghanistan, and it was kind of on from there. And we lost a guy that first day. That was our first casualty, Seth Sharp, and he's just from Adairsville, Georgia. And
some of your friends.
He was a buddy of mine.
With, yeah.
Yep. He used to ride home with me, a lot. A lot of times we'd try to sneak out, and get back. You're not supposed to go, whatever it is, 100, 200 miles from base on a standard weekend.
Kind of on standby when you're on standby.
Yeah,
right?
but if we'd get out early on a Friday, me and him would jump in the truck, and he lived north of Atlanta, so I'd cut up that way and drop him off, and then I'd take the back roads, come back over to Huntsville, and then pick him back up Sunday night, and we'd drive through the night to get back to base by Monday morning. He's a good kid, funny as he could be, and but yeah, he got killed that first day, and then just every week or so, every couple weeks, you lose another one, and it was definitely a lot different than it was in Iraq. Iraq was kind of slow. We lost 2 guys toward the end of our deployment in Iraq, but Afghanistan was
different.
Wild west there for a little while.
Yeah. How did your experiences in combat affect your outlook on life?
I don't know. I know you definitely, learn to appreciate the little things. You don't sweat the small stuff. I've tried to tell my kids, now, and I've brought it up, several times. Kids, they'll complain about, having to do the most minor thing, or whatever. And I always pictured this one specific kid in Afghanistan, and I've got a picture of him. But he's walking down the road. He's been in the field, working in the field all morning, and he's walking down the road, and he's got so much. I forget if it's corn or he's got so much of this crop on his back that's just like overflowing on both sides. You can't even see that it's a kid. Like you can't even see, you just see the feet and this huge bundle of crop, going down the road. And that kid's 8 or 9 years old, and him and his brothers and sisters are out there working, and so I always think of things like that, of how good we have it over here. No matter how bad it gets, it's never that bad. And that kid's going back, and he's going to go back, and he's going to eat some goat, and he's going to eat some bread that his mama's made, and he's going to bathe in a nasty creek, and he's going to sleep on a dirt floor, and but then our kids complain when the Wi-Fi goes out. So it's
Don't know how good we have it.
I think it was just a big reminder of how good we have it, no matter how bad it gets.
Have you ever thought about would you do it all over again? If so, is there anything you would change?
I definitely would do it over again. I still, I've been out for, I guess 15 years now. I got out in 2010. And I still, at least once a week, have a dream that I'm back in. And I'm married now, and 3 kids, and in my dreams sometimes I'll be driving, I'll be at work, in my dream, and I'll hear something has happened on the radio, another 9/11 or something,
right.
And I'll immediately drive to the Marine Corps office, and even I'm 47 years old, and I'll sign up for the Marines
volunteer your services again.
And he'll tell me, that's good, you're leaving first thing in the morning. And in my dream, I'm driving back home trying to figure out how it is that I'm going to explain to my wife that I've just joined the Marines again, or I'm going back in. But yeah, I have dreams all the time about being back, being back in combat, things like that. So I would definitely do it again. I wish everybody had to go in. Everybody should have to experience, going through boot camp and just getting that discipline. I wish I had been able to go in earlier. Like I said, I didn't go in until I was 28. I don't know what would have happened if I'd have gone in '96. You know, I don't think there was anything going on. I think I had a 4 or 5 year contract when I was supposed to go in back in '96, so I probably would have gotten out in 2000 or June of 2001. You know, would I've gotten out or would I've stayed in? And then September 11th happened. If I had gotten out, would I've gone right back in so that I could go to war? You know, just a lot of what ifs and things. You
A
know,
lot of
but,
wondering. Yeah.
I don't regret, you know, doing 4 years and getting out, especially at that age. I mean, I was 28, and then I was beat up by the time I got done. You know, just with 4 years, had bad feet, bad back, and bad knees, and hearing. And
You're like 32 years old, and you got that one.
Yeah,
32
yeah.
years, yeah.
So
You still stay in touch with a lot of the guys you served with?
I do. There's a couple of the guys that were still really close, and I've been lucky enough to go see, you know, some of the other guys that I was in with, some that are still around, Camp Lejeune and stuff like that. And took the family to Myrtle Beach a few years ago, and took them up to the base.
A little reunion.
Yep, took them up to the base, and unfortunately, you know, when I see the most of them is at funerals. You know, we've had a lot of suicides, a lot of just Marines getting out and doing dumb stuff when they get out, and accidents and deaths and stuff. And so, you know, I'll try to make sure we have a good showing at funerals and stuff like that. So get to see a lot of them then. But yeah, there's, you know, so I got one of my really good friends in Dallas, Texas. Me and him talk just about every week, and another boy in Ohio that we still talk. And so they're still have, you know, there was 220 of us or so in southern Afghanistan, the southernmost combat outpost in Afghanistan. And so there's 220 of us. Well, there's not 200. There's maybe 190 of us left that are still alive, that know exactly what we all experienced.
Sure.
And so there's only 190 people in the world that know exactly what we experienced. And so it's always, I don't even know how to describe the sense of relief and the feeling when I see one of them, when I see one of those guys. It's just, it's weird. And I'm sure it's the same for, you know, veterans of every war, but
a lot of the veterans that I've talked to say the same thing, James, that, you know, it's good to get together or talk to some of them. You know, it's therapy in a way, you know, and it just feels so much better, they said, after they talk with some old friends, that things that they went through the same thing that they did.
Yep.
So, how being in the military and the Marines helped you in the civilian life? Now, you became a policeman, right? You know,
I did. I got out. The month I got out of the Marine Corps and got back home, I took the physical fitness test for the police department, and so that kind of worked out. The timing worked out good. That's the first step in the application process for becoming a police officer. So went through that whole process, got hired on with Huntsville Police, and I think I started the academy July of 2010. No, July of 2011. And went through the academy, and got assigned to West Precinct, working third shift, and did that for several years as a police officer. Yeah.
And how long did you work for the police department? Was it, what, 15?
Right, I did right at 12 and a half,
12 and a
almost
half,
almost 13 years. Did mostly patrol throughout the first several years of my career. Was just a patrol officer and a field training officer. So I would train new police officers once they graduated the academy. They ride with a field training officer for 14 weeks. So I was one of those that some of them would ride with, and then moved on, put in for narcotics, and did the narcotics investigations for about 4 years total, and really enjoyed that.
Now you have your own detective agency now. Tell us.
So I left there. Yeah, I left the police world on end of October of 2023, and started doing private investigations. Opened a private investigation business, and do a lot of criminal defense work. So, you know, if somebody's charged with any crime, but I do mostly like major crimes. Somebody's charged with a major crime, the defense attorney will also have, the police has access to unlimited amounts of, investigators and funding and testing and everything else for the investigation of a crime on the police side, and the defense doesn't have that. We don't, they don't have access to all that. So we would, we'll come in and they'll retain us to do, a review of whatever the case is, and just try to review what the police have already done, and then try to make sure they didn't miss anything, and kind of go back behind them. And if there's any other witnesses that might need to be talked to, or witnesses to be located, or just to talk to a witness, no matter what side they're on, just to find out, what they saw, what are they going to say when they come to court, just to kind of get an idea, just so that the defense attorney
Well,
can
you're
help.
trained in that, so
Right.
we should
And it's
bet.
good. Yeah, it's good because I can see both sides of a case. So it's been good.
Tell us a little about your family. You and your wife Chrissy have three children, right?
We do. She already had a son already when I met her, and I was a police officer, and she was working at Huntsville Hospital. She worked third shift, so we met, and I had a daughter already, and then we have one daughter together. So my oldest is she just finished up her second year at UNA, she's going to be a nurse. And then my son, he just turned 15 earlier this week. Mm-hmm. And then my daughter is 8 years old.
Okay. James, being inducted into the Hall of Heroes, what did that mean to you?
I mean, it's cool, and honestly, I mean, the way I look at it is that it's cool for my kids, and I knew it would be cool for my kids and my wife and the rest of my family, but I just think about my kids, and as far as in the night that I was inducted, and I wish if this guy still has this video, I don't know who the guy was, if he could reach out and get me this video, but there was a guy in the crowd that was filming with his phone when I was being inducted, and he was filming my youngest daughter. And the look on her face was just, she was lit up and smiling, and she was on her knees in the chair, just looking up at her dad. And she just, you could just see how proud she was. And that's what means the world to me. You want your family and your wife and kids to look at you as I hate using the word hero, but look at you that way and be proud of you.
They're
and
proud
so
of you,
that's my biggest thing is.
Well, maybe that person will speak up, or when they see this on ETV and YouTube and so forth.
Yeah, he came up right after and showed it to me that he had filmed it, and I kicked myself because I didn't ask him to send it to me, but it was a cool moment. But that's the big thing for me. I don't I don't look for the recognition and stuff like that. I just, you want your family and
to be proud of you.
Your kids to be proud of you. And so if that did it, then I'm glad.
Good. James, we want to thank you for participating in our oral history series and allowing us to preserve your military experience for the people of this community. Semper Fi, and thank you for your service to our country.
I appreciate you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, if you'd like more information regarding this interview or any interview in our Military Heritage Series, please contact the Madison County Military Heritage Commission website at mcmhc.us. Thank you very much for being with us.